The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
I normally try to put in as much media as I can so that you can have not only points of reference and know exactly what I'm talking about, but also that you can have an interactive experience. But I don't think I'm going to get to much media today because the case that I need to make today is pretty simple. It's 2018, and we are dealing with the resurgence of white supremacy and white nationalism and male supremacy and an anti-LGBTQ sentiment. We're dealing with it almost as though we've made no gains at all in those areas. I look at the situation at our borders, and I look at the justification, more so than anything else. Look at the justification that Donald Trump gives for explaining why they are doing this to the children. They're separating children of asylum seekers from their parents. And the explanation that they give, the justification that they give, it either is a complete and verifiable lie to our faces as though we are children and don't know when our parents are lying to us, or it is playing to the racial hatred and resentment of white people towards brown and black people, particularly brown people at the border. But it's all molded and forged in the same crucible of bigotry towards black people. It all comes from the same source. The playbook is the same. They vilify the people at the border, and they make illegal things that are legal. Seeking asylum is never illegal. Human life is not illegal, but specifically seeking asylum at the borders of any nation is not illegal. However, we are in a place where now, I don't really know if maybe we're underestimating the gravity of it all. Not maybe, we are. We are literally in a place where Fox News can run. I thought Bill O'Reilly was bad, but Tucker Carlson is far worse than Bill O'Reilly would ever be. And Bill O'Reilly is still crap in terms of how, at least Bill O'Reilly was transparent with his white male supremacy. He was transparent with it. He had no qualm about just saying it for what it is. What Tucker Carlson does is to peddle the same white male supremacy and just say it doesn't exist and that it's just a matter of fact and this is just the way it is. Last night, he did a segment also on the children at the border, and his explanation for it, the reason that we really shouldn't care about it, is the quintessential whataboutism that the people who act as though, those of us who act as though we care about the people at the border, we don't even have children. We don't really care about them. And if we really cared about them, then we would say something about all the abortions that are taking place in our country. So that's like the third strand of justification that you're going to find in this. You're going to find people who simply lie and say it's not happening. Then you're going to have those who are saying that it's illegal for them to come, who just have to follow the laws. And then, of course, those of us who don't really care about it, we're just politicizing this. And then you have the Laura Ingrams of the world, another Fox host, who said, well, yeah, we're putting them in cages, but it's essentially summer camp. Her little literal words. It's essentially summer camp. The difference here is that, summer camp where they strip you away from your parents. There's audio of children. There's so many examples of this. And I don't think I want to put media in here today because I want you to go find it. I want you to go out. I normally package this up and you can get all that you need on a topic in one place. But this is an issue that I need you to become engulfed in. I need you, if you're not looking and searching and wondering what's going on, I know most of you are, but just the few of you who may have been waiting, the one or two of you who may have been waiting for me to package it all up, I need you to go out there and see just how horrific this is. The audio of the children crying and wailing, and then the border or the detention center officials were like, oh, all we need now is we have our own orchestra. This type of thing, the story of the 10 children who were all dressed in the same gray sweatsuits from Walmart, who were boarding a plane, separate from their families, crying at 2 o'clock in the morning, not knowing where they're going, don't speak English. Children, all accompanied by one adult who wasn't their parent. And when one of the stewardesses tried to comfort a crying child, she was verbally attacked by that chaperone, essentially. And then, of course, one other layer of this that I have to put into the mix. You have those people who are so black, are so engulfed in whatever is the most important thing to them, that they don't feel that it's necessary. They feel like we're giving this too much attention. Listen, if you're so black that you can't pay attention to what's happening at the border to these children, then, you probably not listening to my show anyway. There's no need for me to finish that sentence because you're probably not listening to the show. But all of these absurdities, and we are living still in a period of a resurgence of a white lash, a resurgence of white male supremacy in this country. And it's flanked by people who still think that we should that we should coddle this, that we should put on white gloves to handle this, that we should try to appeal to people who are quite literally looking for any justification they can find to explain away what's happening at the border to these children, to the children of asylum seekers who are being stripped away from their parents, put into cages. We are still, I have to reiterate that because I think I talked right past it and you may have missed the point. We're still dealing with people on our side of the equation, on the progressive left side of the equation, who believe that those individuals who are okay with what's happening at the border, we still have people on our side of the equation who think that those people are redeemable, are able to be persuaded in order to get electoral power. Let me make it even more plain. In this era of the resurgence of white supremacy and male supremacy, we still have people who are trying to convince us that we should try to reach out across the aisle and convince those Donald Trump voters who want nothing more, or they simply enjoy what's happening right now to the children of asylum seekers at the borders. I don't know if I need to put a finer point on it. Maybe I don't, but I will. If anyone who is taking the time right now to say that we should be concerned about how to reach Donald Trump voters in the face of this rabid white male supremacy that is being, and I haven't even gotten to the male supremacy yet, but I'll get to that, or maybe. But anyone who is telling us, looking at the situation right now, and their number one message, or their only concern is that we need to find out how to reach Donald Trump voters, when Donald Trump voters are laughing at what's happening at the border. They are enjoying, most of them approve of what's happening at the border. The recent polling showed that Republicans support what is happening at the border to these children. So anyone who's telling you that we should prioritize reaching out to those voters don't know what the hell they're talking about. How can we look at what's happening, at what America is doing? And I'll get to all the nuances. My brain is just working and firing off. My synapses are firing off, and there's so many different directions. I will take a moment. I'm going to go tangentially here. We have been leading to this very carefully and meticulously, and it's just has been an inevitable process leading to this through every administration. Through every administration, we have been leading to the point where now Donald Trump can enact his fascistic policies. Now, We who complained about the behaviors of our Department of Homeland Security, the behavior of ICE, we complained about it at its inception and its creation with George W. Bush. We complained about the deportations underneath Barack Obama, and we saw this moving in this direction. We know that this is not a unique problem to any particular party, but we also know that if we had a problem with how Barack Obama handled immigrants and asylum seekers, then we sure as hell should have a problem with how Donald Trump is doing it. We absolutely should be enraged. But what's happening is the exact opposite. People are using the justification or the whataboutism, right? Because it's not a justification, it's just a whataboutism. They're using the whataboutism about Barack Obama's deportation, record-breaking deportations. They're using that to extinguish the rage that we have about what Donald Trump is doing. See, this is what whataboutisms always end up being about, right? They're not about pointing out hypocrisy. They're about extinguishing the anger and the rage that you have at a particular situation and incident, right? Whataboutisms are always about extinguishing any type of activity or any type of rage that would change the system. And here we are at the most unfortunate opportunity to change the system. And I say unfortunate because it's coming, it's at a moment of America traumatizing children. But at this moment where we now see how disgusting our immigration policies and what we're doing to asylum seekers, as we can, as a nation, start to see how disgusting it is an opportunity for us to not only fix what Donald Trump did and is doing, but to go back and fix what Barack Obama was doing. But instead of using this as an opportunity to do both, people what about their way out of even doing anything. We shouldn't really care about what's happening. No. What we should care about is the fact that Barack Obama deported 5 million people, or whatever the actual number is. That's the tangent. But to come back to my main point, we have so-called allies who can look at this resurgence of white supremacy that's being executed at the expense of people, of black people, yes, brown people, immigrants of color, particularly. It's coming at the expense of women. It's coming at the expense of anyone who's not Christian. It's coming at the expense. It is a resurgence of white male Christian supremacy in this country. And we still have people on our side of the equation who think the thing to do is to try to talk to Donald Trump supporters about economics. Do you realize, and I know you do as my listener, you do realize that Donald Trump supporters and conservatives in general have demonstrated a willingness, a fully conscious willingness to sacrifice their economic well-being in order to support their quote unquote culture. There is a level of white resentment towards our safety nets in this country, towards welfare, towards Medicaid, that supersedes their own economic best interest, or the economic best interest of that white individual. I mean, the new study that was reported on by the Washington Post a couple of weeks ago outlines this, that the attacks that come from the right towards our safety nets are based on racial resentment. And so the argument that all we need to do to reach Donald Trump supporters is to discuss things based on economics instead of a racial frame betrays the reality that these people are fully aware of what they're doing, even if it's to the detriment of their own economic conditions. As counterintuitive as that is to you and I, because we rationally believe people are going to seek out their best material condition or things that are going to improve their material situation, the reality of it is that the culture wars, racial resentment, these things that are real, tangible, measurable phenomenon, these things are more important to Donald Trump's support base than anything else. And it is best demonstrated by their acceptance and approval of what is happening at our border right now today. And in the face of this, people on our side of the equation who call themselves our allies are still explaining things away with the term economic anxiety. That's why the phrase becomes a joke. The reason that phrase becomes a punchline is because it is used to explain away everything when the reality is slapping you in the face. It is a level of racial resentment. It is a investment in the culture wars, because to them, the most important thing is that they protect their culture. Which brings me to my next point. There is no path forward without us addressing male supremacy, white supremacy, Christian supremacy, basically what everyone dismisses as identity politics, what everyone dismisses as culture wars. There is no way forward without us addressing that, because that is literally what is in power and preventing us from making any progress on economic issues. Not only is it preventing us from making progress on economic issues, it is literally the foundation that they use to make our economic condition worse. As much as we want to end capitalism, we are in a place where we have doubled, tripled, quadrupled down on the same economic policies that have hurt us throughout the last 40 years of my life. We have allowed Donald Trump's white supremacist road to the White House, because that's the only thing that really took him there, that and his shamelessness. But the white supremacist road that Donald Trump took to the White House now was the framework that empowered this economic bill, this tax plan that is going to eviscerate wealth all across the country and redistribute it to the top. Now, what's new about this technique? Nothing particularly new about it, besides the fact that we're living in a resurgent era of this technique. It's still the same technique that white slave owners used and that they used during Jim Crow, right? It's the same technique that they use. It's the same galvanizing white resentment as a political tool that generates economic benefit for the wealthy elite. The part that we disagree with people on the left, some individuals on the left, is this. Those individuals who sacrifice their economic benefit, they do so willingly because it is more important for them to win the culture war. Now, you may agree on that point, but how do we fix that is where so many of us on the left disagree. Do we fix it by just trying to appeal to their economic well-being? Well, obviously, that's not working. It just isn't working. Because and this is not a thought experiment, right? This is not just, some casual observation, but look at the polling. Even after Donald Trump instituted this tax policy, Republicans overwhelmingly support him. You know why they overwhelmingly support him? Because he has winning issues in their book. In their book, these culture war issues are preeminent, notwithstanding the fact that so many of Donald Trump's supporters are wealthy in the first place. So, of course, his tax plan is going to benefit them. So the entire framing of this argument, of this divide on class or race or both of them, it really is a moot point at this point, because we're living in the realization of weaponizing white resentment in order to get economic gain for the wealthy elite. And for whatever percentage of the white working class that supports Donald Trump, despite the fact that he is instituting economic programs that is going to eviscerate them, I preface with that because there are disagreements and to what extent white supporters, white working class voters support Donald Trump compared to wealthy white individuals. But for whatever percentage it is, they are willingly complicit with their economic demise for the sake of their culture wars. And maybe they've just convinced themselves that they're not working hard enough and they've bought into the false religion of meritocracy. Maybe. But the reason that they're willing to buy into that is because they have a level of resentment towards people of color. Actually, I'm sorry, just anyone who does not neatly comport to their culture or service their culture. You could be black, that's fine, so long as you service their culture. You could be gay, that's fine, so long as you service their culture. And everything that's happening now with the children of asylum seekers being separated from their parents, our government either telling us it's not happening or trying to explain why it's okay that we're doing it, even though it's against it is a violation of international law. And then we see all of the conservative media outlets justifying it, explaining it, calling it summer camps, or saying that liberals don't really care about children. All of this is just another sad example of what our government can get away with culturally, socially, and economically on the wave and the force of racial resentment. So what do we do about it? How do we fix it? I don't know. I can tell you how things were fixed for me, and I'll explain that in a minute. But what I can tell you is how not to fix this and how to make the situation worse. The way we do not fix this and the way we make this situation worse is by creating safe spaces for this bigotry. People like Candace Owens, the conservative, the red pill black, the black woman who is like all the rave in conservative spaces. She is making a safe space for conservatives to believe that this stuff that we're talking about, racial resentment, that's not even a real thing, right? That's her job. That's why she gets paid so well. That's why she's famous. That's why she's fomented to the top. It's because she's servicing white supremacy and male supremacy in a fashion. She's providing a service for them that they can't provide for themselves, racial cover. And so she is creating a safe space for white male supremacy by saying it doesn't exist. Liberals have a similar problem. Liberals create a safe space for white supremacy and male supremacy inside of liberal spaces by saying, yes, these things exist, but it's a conservative problem. Right? And to test this theory, point out racism or sexism inside of liberal Democrat spaces, and you'll see exactly how quickly they turn on you. But if you point out racism and sexism in conservative circles, then they're all with you. I'm with you, brother. I would have voted for Obama a third time. And in some progressive circles, particularly class reductionist circles, they provide the same type of cover, but they provide it by saying that race should be secondary. And that we should prioritize class critiques or class analysis above race. This, to me, is as insidious as the rest, because it not only emboldens and protects white supremacy and male supremacy, it also emboldens and protects capitalism. We can't get to addressing the ills of capitalism because we are constantly having to fight the culture war. And unless you're saying, before I finish that thought, before I get there, you cannot even broach the subject of capitalism until you address the half of our American voting population that is protecting it based on their racial resentment. You can't. We see how much they could get away with just by playing their own race card, by making you afraid of MS-13, by making you afraid of the black mother in the welfare line or in the grocery store with a food stamp card, right? We can't even get to addressing the ills of capitalism because that type of red meat is so pervasive and so effective in our country. And to hear people literally saying that because Donald Trump supporters and conservatives and Republicans are so delicate around the issue of race and gender and sexuality and identity politics, that we should put those things aside in order to communicate with them in a language that we can all agree on, which is class and economics. To hear people saying that really, not only does it betray your allies, but it betrays your own goal. Because they have demonstrated, and they are demonstrating right now in your face today, 2016, the era of Trump. They have demonstrated that they are willing, Donald Trump supporters are willing, those who are even poor, because so many of them are rich, so I reject the framing overall, but whatever percentage of white working class people we're talking about, They have demonstrated that they are willing to sacrifice their economic well-being in exchange for wins in the culture wars. In other words, put me in poverty to own the libs. And again, this is only relevant to that percentage of Donald Trump supporters who still support him even after the tax plan is eviscerating whatever wealth they thought they would get by transferring from voting for Barack Obama in 2012 to voting for Donald Trump in 2016. And yet he still has really strong approval ratings amongst the Republicans, amongst his support group. But the entire framing of this conversation is problematic. It's fallacious, and it's ridiculous because we're looking at the results. We're looking at the tangible results of how far you can get with racial resentment in this country. We're looking at the result. And I'm not just talking about the election of Donald Trump, because electoral politics aside, we're looking at real damage that is being approved by Republicans in this country. Real damage to families, real damage to the LGBTQ community, real damage to the immigrant community, real damage to the black community, real damage to women in this country. And not only that, we're looking at how far this resentment, this cultural resentment and this racial resentment, how much damage it can do to our own economic goals. So I don't know. I honestly can't lay out a map to tell you how do we fix people who are motivated by racial resentment, undermining their own economic interest. But I can tell you that a part of it is the culture wars. And the way I know it's the culture wars is because of how much money billionaires are investing in the culture war on the opposite side. They are investing millions of dollars to ensure that they have enough voices on their side of the equation to make sure that every single day of the week they can capitalize off of racial and cultural resentment. They can capitalize off of the culture wars. Yes, their end goal is to protect their money. Their end goal is to protect capitalism. Obviously, that's their ultimate goal. But the way that they are doing it in this era is by waging the culture war against black people, against the LGBTQ community, against immigrants. I mean, these are the people. We're just collateral damage. Actually, I'm sorry, we're the fuel for their weapons. This is how they accomplish it. This is how they get people to vote against their best economic interest, because of their lingering bigotry, their lingering resentment. This is how you get the conditions of where now we're making things even worse than what Barack Obama did at the border. I mean, we're literally at a place where we can justify caging children. We explain it away by saying it's not really a cage. We explain it away by saying, oh, it's like summer camp. We explain it away by saying, oh, they have television, they get food. Meanwhile, we actually have people telling us that the way to win this, the way that we win over those people who Hillary Clinton called deplorables, the way that we win them is by finding a better way of talking to them, to minimize the racial element, when the racial element is what mobilizes them. I don't see how how do we soft pedal? How do we not hit it head on for what it is? How do we not at the top of our lungs address white supremacy and racism when the very thing that's driving them is white supremacy and racism, all to the benefit of capitalism? The general fear is that if we continue to confront head on racism and white supremacy and male supremacy, then we are going to alienate a group of individuals that we could otherwise cooperate with for economic benefit. And I firmly believe that those people are not reachable. They are not reachable because if we look at how they have contorted themselves into justifying the behaviors and the actions of our government at the border with immigrants of color and asylum seekers of color, If we look at what's driving that, then we will firmly understand that what is preeminent to them above any economic concern is their racial and cultural resentment. So therefore, we should not waste a single word, a single character, a single 180, 240 character thread. We should not waste 1 minute trying to reach them, because they are not reachable, because they revel in their cultural and racial resentment. And it is the driving force behind their political participation, even if it's to the detriment of their economic position. And furthermore, by refusing to address the racial and cultural resentment that drives this head on, the refusal to confront it head on is itself undermining to anyone's goals around class. And it further exacerbates the problem for your allies by creating safe spaces for the problems that exist not only in conservative circles, but in liberal circles as well as progressive circles. And that's just the truth, whether you like it or not. That's all the time I have for you today. Thanks so much for hanging out with me. It is always a pleasure. Be sure to go to progressivearmy.com and check out all of my recent articles. I'm doing a lot more writing. That was my goal for 2018, was to write more. So that's what I'm doing. Also, go to patreon.com/the BPD show and become a patron today. Thanks so much. And I will see you throughout the rest of the week. Take care, everyone.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.